Team MZ will borrow Hoopa's power to dive into one of these strange distortions.
Greetings, Beyond the New. Come on in, sit on down. Pokemon fans are hungry, and I'm not just talking about that delicious Slowpoke tail. No, I'm talking about information regarding new Pokemon, new trainers, new regions, gimmicks, and mechanics. And with the release of Pokemon Legends EA happening just last month, we finally got the return of our coveted Mega Evolution. But even still, with a DLC releasing more and more Mega Evolution forms, so many fans are asking, what comes next? I mean, Gen 10 is just over the horizon, and we have to hope that it's going to revitalize the series into that AAA title that we all hope it can still be. So I began to speculate. What could these new gimmicks look like? These new mechanics, functionality? And I started to look at a really interesting place for inspiration. That being Ben10 Ultimate Alien. For those of you who don't know, I actually got started doing art online with Ben10 fan art, and so it retains pretty close to my heart. When the Ultimatrix is revealed as an invention created by Albedo, at the ability to turn aliens into their most apex principles, it really changed the idea of what we understand about the aliens in this series, and I'm hoping that we're able to do the same with Pokemon. Expand them not just into a mega form, but into their ultimate form. What history and time would turn these Pokemon into if given their ultimate and apex form? So, without much further ado, let's hop right into that video. Hi, I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern. Welcome to the channel. While you're here, don't forget to drop down below, like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff that makes me and YouTube happy, because it's hero time. So as stated in our previous video, the Ultimate Stone found its way into the Kanto region, and thus works very well with a lot of Kantonian Pokemon. One that was highly requested was Snorlax, and while I can feign surprise, truthfully, it makes a ton of sense. Snorlax is one of the most popular Pokemon of our original 151, as well as being one of our first gimmick Pokemon. That being that it was used to block roads throughout the early games, and it created this fun dynamic that we've seen repeated a dozen times over. I remember playing Pokemon and trying desperately to figure out the puzzle of how to get past this Pokemon that was blocking my path with its enormous hefty body. And I thought, if we were going to evolve these Pokemon much as actual animals do to become hyper specialized, why wouldn't we look at that as a key example? I mean, even Gmax Snorlax does something similar, going from being a path blockage to becoming a path itself. And we get to see a lot more of the exploration of what makes Snorlax Snorlax as we moved into Z moves and those types of formats, with the idea that its eyes become bright when awakened and it's able to charge quickly. I thought, taking all of this into account with this design, why not make something that feels so much more solid? Something that is blocking paths, but also has the strength to knock down existing structures that block paths itself. I went in and decided that I wanted to make it feel a little bit more hefty, give it more of a steel type of feel, as well as building on the idea of it growing in stature and strength. I went with this design that looks like a belt wrapping around the body that has been broken completely, unsheathing this energy in the center of its stomach. Again, kind of looking at Ben10 as an example, I looked at Upchuck and how it has the ability to store this black hole of a connected stomach within itself, able to eat anything. And so I brought that into account with this design, with this big energy sphere in the center of Snorlax's body, one that has been bust loose even by this belt type of design to the body there. I also wanted to give him a little bit more fluff because I wanted to bring in some of that Munchlax type of vibe, and decided to give him these big, beefy, walloping arms that allow him to knock down other structures that are blocking paths. Ultimately, this version is about creating new pathways and blocking existing ones. Think of the idea of the shifting maze, whereas even if you are able to come across some system of understanding the pathways of a region, the pathways themselves change, and this Pokemon would very much be the pinnacle of that idea. Make way, here he comes. Ring bells, bang the drums, because you're gonna love Ultimate Snorlax, the sleeping Pokemon. Still a normal type, but has gained that steel typing as well to play into that metal structure that he's built around his body. His fur now becoming like hardened shavings of metal. You can try and shake this guy awake, but it is gonna be abrasive for you the whole time. And look at that size comparison on the bottom right there. He has become a walking, living moon of a creature, just blocking not just one, not just two, but possibly 3 pathways all at once. One door is guarded by one who lies, one door is guarded by one who tells the truth, but you're not even gonna make it through because there is a massive Ultimate Snorlax in the way of both doors. Next up was another highly requested Pokemon, that being Poliwrath, and I have some things to confess here. I never really got Poliwrath. I mean, I remember encountering this Pokemon as a kid with Poliwhirl and knowing that it would evolve into Poliwrath and deciding it wasn't worth it to me. As a young kid, I really wanted Pokemon that rewarded me for training them and evolving them and leveling them up as they go, and Poliwrath really didn't do that for me. It just felt too similar. And a couple generations later, we got introduced to Politoed, who I was also kind of let down with. I thought that just looks like a cartoonized frog. So I don't know, maybe I have something against frogs and toads. Either way, I digress. Hi, Editing Stern here, just popping in to say I know that I'm gonna get some hate by saying that I didn't like Poliwrath or Politoed, but just to give you a little bit of frame of reference and to prove myself right in some instances here, I went looking for full art for these Pokemon that I could utilize to showcase in these portions of the video. Full art for these two Pokemon does not exist. The only place that you can get a full art for Poliwrath is in Pokemon TCG Pocket. So yeah, I feel like I'm validated a little bit there. We had a couple areas that we were able to look at for the evolution of this Pokemon into its ultimate form. One of those was the beta design for Poliwrath, where he was seen as an overfed king, even wearing a bright gold crown that would go on to inform how we acquire Politoed generations later. So I went in with this knowledge, but I also felt like it wasn't enough. Luckily, you guys in the comments spoke up that OR Ash from the Ink Tank and 5 years later had actually brought up how ultimate forms with aliens worked in the Ben10 universe. How there is this color swap that happens very often, if not every single time. We see this with Ultimate Echo going from being just stagnant white and green to gaining this brilliant bluish color that is just beautiful to look at. Or how Humongousaur goes from being brown to being green. We even see it with different forms like Wrath turning into Ultimate Wrath as we move into the Omnitrix's Omniverse type of generation. So there's a lot going on that we're able to bring into play with this design and stuff that I was really excited to experiment with and explore, as well as kind of fix the problems that I had previously had with Poliwrath. I decided to go with this golden color, both to emphasize that change in palette, as well as bring in that kingly vibe that we lost from the beta design. I also thought about how it has this wrestling motif and this fighting type of variation to it, and thought how we could expand on this even further. So I decided to give him these bubble tendrils that are able to wrap and grapple its enemies and bring them in. I figure with a Pokemon that's so focused on fighting as well as water, a natural evolution that we'd see this Pokemon take over time is just getting better at a specific type of combat. In this case, it's grappling and close combat style fighting. So all of these things come together to make something that hopefully makes sense, that while changing a lot of the Pokemon, specifically in this way, the palette, still makes it feel like a variation of Poliwrath. So swam and swum your way on over, because we have Ultimate Poliwrath, the tadpole Pokemon. Still a water fighting type, but that intense boost to the attack stat brings us up to a whopping total of 675, with the shiny referencing not just Poliwrath, but the darker gray Poliwrath that we see in the anime more often than not. I'm always surprised at how the colors and variations of color change between the official art and the anime, so I wanted to touch base on that here in the shiny. For the size comparison, he's just a bit bigger than Poliwrath, and I really wanted to keep that idea of him being a king, but a short king. Nothing wrong with that. I dig the yellow, and I really feel like it shines bright against that light blue. Quick thing, turns out that about 70% of you guys watching actually aren't subscribed. So if you're liking the content, make sure to drop below and subscribe to the channel so you can be alerted whenever new content drops. It's really good for me and hopefully really good for you too to stay connected with the channel. And don't forget that if you want to become a part of our community, you can do so by hopping into our Discord as well. Reminders of videos coming out, as well as opportunities to talk about character design and all the weird, goofy, nerdy stuff that we're into. Five Nights at Freddy's, Transformers, everything in between. So I'll let you get back to the video. Don't forget to subscribe and join that Discord, and I'll talk to you in just a sec. Okay, so I know that I set the rules up pretty simply when we first started, that I was going to be looking only at the Cantonian Pokemon, and I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids. So I looked at kind of what you guys had been suggesting and recommending in the comments and found that Tyranitar was not only one that was recommended a couple of times across different Discord servers, comments, and other pages, but it's also just a really cool Pokemon. So I figured, why not? I looked at designing this Pokemon in a way that looked at a more dinosaur-like build, and yeah, looking at Tyranitar and saying, how can we make it more dinosaur-like, is like looking at a meatball and saying, how can we add more meat? So I decided that I was going to kind of focus on these smaller arms, make the body a little bit more girthy, and build out a little bit more of the structures that make it already look very dinosaur-esque. Tyranitar is obviously a reference to Godzilla, so I wanted to focus a little bit more in that direction. Work with some darker colors, as well as add that flowing radioactive style energy that Godzilla's kind of famous for. Looking at how we're able to split the body open in ways that work alongside Mega Tyranitar, but don't mimic what we've seen done already. So I kind of had a challenge on this one. How do I make something given the ideas that we already have, but not copying blatantly something else? I'm hoping that I got far enough with the line work, but the color is really what's going to affect this change for us. I decided that since we were using Godzilla as a heavy inspiration, I was going to go with some grays and blues. Now, your question is probably this: how does this form come across as ultimate? Well, my thought is that Tyranitar actually probably is capable of being so much grander, so much bigger, and so much more intimidating. But given that it's a Pokemon and has to work alongside humans in order to kind of get done what it needs to do in battle, it's kind of been limited in what it's capable of. But without humans, in a future where humans have either gone extinct or Pokemon capturing has gone the way of the dodo, what if it was able to accomplish its truest form, its truest potential? This is the part in these videos that gets kind of difficult, because you have to think about a speculative future, and this one is kind of bleak for us, but ultimately positive for the Pokemon. So put whatever limbs are left after the radioactive meltdown together for Ultimate Tyranitar, the armor Pokemon. It is a dark dragon type, yes, dropping that rock typing in favor of the much more powerful and devastating dragon type, with the shiny as a reference to Iron Thorns, and that flowing blue light coming off the back of this thing, just absolutely awesome. There's not a ton of words that I could use to describe it, so I'm gonna go with awesome, especially with that special attack stat boost from our Ultimate Stone. This thing is a monster in every definition of the word, and I know I'd love to have it on my team. Now, we could go over every other region that exists within the Pokemon universe, but realistically, there is one Pokemon that if we were going to do this with any Pokemon in the Kanto region, this is the one that we can't skip, and I'm surprised that I did in the first video in the first place. That, of course, is Mewtwo, the genetic Pokemon. I mean, we've seen it done a million times in cinema, right? In different stories and movies and comics and video games, the idea of these genetically built and modified and manufactured creatures wanting to attain their own destiny. I mean, Mewtwo in the first Pokemon movie follows that exact same line, wanting to become his own Pokemon, to be able to understand who he is on a fundamental level. And so it makes a lot of sense that we would see this concept, this want and understanding of oneself to evolve into a quest for deitydom, or godliness, right? So with the idea of these ultimate stones being a portion of Arceus' strength, this is the chance that a character like Mewtwo can have to take advantage of. And when looking at the structure and design of Mewtwo, there's a couple different areas that we can take to expand upon with this. One is that weird loopy thing at the back of Mewtwo's neck. I have fond memories of Mewtwo, given that when I was just a kid, I remember going to the local fair that came around once a year and actually winning a 3-foot tall stuffed animal of Mewtwo. I dragged that thing around because at the time, it was about the same height as me, and that weird neck loopy thing was the perfect handle, so it really stuck in my mind. But it wasn't until years later that I came to understand the reason for this design. It was built out that Mewtwo was so intellectual, so smart of a Pokemon that it actually needed 2 spinal columns to be able to carry all of these nervous systems and bundles of nerves, so that's where that comes from. It's literally a second neck. So, when thinking about the ultimate idea here, the concept of a Pokemon reaching its fullest potential, I thought, what if we're able to combine that so that the entire body is now in tune with the mind, expanding that loop to now come not out of the neck, but out of the brain itself, out of the head of the Pokemon, loop back and then join back into a 3-pointed spire that connects the lower body to the upper. And I wanted to carry this same design element into other portions as well, like the tail, or how the neck is now cushioned by this large and inflated area across the shoulders, which I see as bundles of super-powered nerves. The idea of this design with Mewtwo, given that he is such a specific case, needed to make sense, and so I really thought for a while on how to do it. Maybe that's why I didn't do it in the first video, was I felt like it needed just a little bit more time. So that's what we worked on here. Another element that I wanted to jump into with Mewtwo here was the coloring. You see, Mewtwo is this weird purplish grayish color because it's supposed to be a semblance to Mew, this washed out, desaturated form of what the original perfect Pokemon was. And so here, I wanted Mewtwo to really take on a life of its own, moving away from that pink and more into a bluish hue, but keeping some of that purple and darker violet type of tone to major portions of the body, but mainly sticking with this blue color. Because while Mewtwo is evolving in so many ways across the course of time, I also wanted to see it split off and separate itself from its initial DNA compound with Mew. And I feel like there's a lot of ideas that came into play that I'm really proud of how they were able to coalesce into this idea. This actually was the first drawing that I did for this video, and I wanted to hold it off till the end because I am just so proud of the way that it turned out. As an artist, you have to find ways to be proud of your work. Even if it's not perfect, even if it comes out wrong, we have to find ways to be excited about what we're doing. And with this drawing, I'm very excited. Hold your cheers, hold your applause. You know what he did to the last people who were excited at his birth. This is Ultimate Mewtwo, the genetic Pokemon, still a pure Psychic type, because I just couldn't bring myself to come up with a secondary typing that outmaneuvered what Mewtwo was at its inception. You can see that we get a big bump in the HP, bringing that up to 255, given that life and the ability to create life is such a high point for the character, especially in the first Pokemon movie, reaching that grand total of 830 BST, really allowing that power creep to come into Pokemon and take hold of it with both hands right around the neck. For the shiny, I went with our classic Mewtwo colors and wanted the size to feel about where a human is. Hardest part was trying to move away from Mewtwo X and Mewtwo Y, but I feel like here we've hit a perfect balance of the two that also brings in so many new elements. So who was your favorite? Who are you adding onto the team? Let me know down in the comments below. And hey, before you get all the way down there, consider stopping by the description where you can find various opportunities to support the channel. Like our Patreon supporters whose names are right over here. They get all sorts of fun perks like Photoshop files from videos just like this, as well as high-res images of Pokemon that you've seen in this video. Or maybe you want something a little different. You still want those perks, but you're saying, give me a little bit of a different flavor, a little bit of a different taste. Well, you have the opportunity to become a YouTube member as well. Both of these areas, members and patrons, get early access to videos, but YouTube members get to take part in our Stern Conversations podcast, where I talk to creators that you enjoy and that I'm really pumped about. In fact, we have someone coming on who's really well connected to this type of video, and you have the opportunity to ask your questions and get your words out there so that creators that you enjoy can take part in the conversation alongside you. So check that out. All sorts of fun stuff going on, including merchandise, which is going to be linked down below, but it sounds like you know where to find me. So I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. The video does well. They like the ultimate stuff does well. The problem is, like, it's a different place to put my brain. So they take long. Like I did probably like 10 or 15 different variations of characters, and I think we used like 4-ish in this video because I couldn't get them to a point that I was like super happy. But irregardless, right?